3,000 years ago, someone was buried in the sand of the Tarim Basin in western China. Not a Chinese person, not a Mongolian, not anyone the archaeologists expected to find in a desert at the geographic heart of Asia. When the mummies were pulled from the dunes in the 1990s, they had long, reddish-brown hair, tall frames, deep-set, Western-looking features, and absolutely no explanation that satisfied anyone. That image, a red-haired mummy in the middle of China, is what this whole story is really about. Because red hair, in our collective imagination, belongs somewhere very specific. It belongs to Ireland, to Scotland, to that one kid in elementary school who got called Ginger every single day and developed a personality around it. Red hair is Celtic, it's Northern European. It's geographically specific in a way that almost no other human trait is. Except it isn't, not even slightly. And when scientists decided to run a proper, systematic, global comparison of red hair genetics against every major population on Earth, the results dissolved the tidy story we'd been telling for decades. Let's start with the gene. The MC1R gene, melanocortin-1 receptor, produces a protein that controls which kind of melanin your body manufactures. One version produces eumelanin, dark, brown, standard. The other produces pheomelanin, red, warm-toned, and associated with pale skin, freckling, and that famous quirk where red-haired people require significantly more anesthesia than everyone else. A fact that still catches surgeons off guard. Carry 2 copies of certain MC1R variants, and you get the full package. Carry just 1 copy, and you look completely ordinary. You have dark hair, no freckles, no outward sign whatsoever, but the variant is there, latent, waiting for the right genetic match 2 or 3 generations down the line. For years, the working model was simple. A mutation appeared in northwestern Europe somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 years ago. Geographic isolation concentrated it in island and coastal populations, Ireland, Scotland, parts of Wales and Scandinavia. High frequency there, virtually zero everywhere else. Clean, comprehensible, boring. Then the Edinburgh team published their large-scale analysis, pulling from over 350,000 individuals in the UK Biobank and cross-referencing against global population databases. They weren't just looking for the handful of classic MC1R variants, they were looking for all of them. And they found over 200 distinct genetic variants that influence red pigmentation, each with its own distribution pattern across the world. The story immediately became more complicated. Central Asian populations, particularly ancient groups from the Altai and Caucasus regions, were carrying MC1R variants at frequencies no one had predicted. Ancient genomes from what is now Iran showed traces. Populations in the Caucasus Mountains had rates that looked nothing like what you'd expect if red hair originated in and spread from northwest Europe. But those are neighboring regions. Migration and geography could account for that, if you squinted. What you cannot squint away is what researchers found when they examined indigenous Amazonian populations. Specifically, the Caritiana and Surui peoples of Brazil, communities with near-zero European ancestry, groups whose ancestors had been isolated from Eurasian gene flow since the original peopling of the Americas. Both carried traces of MC1R variants, not at Irish frequencies, not anywhere close, but they were present, and they were old, pre-Columbian. They weren't imported by a Spanish colonizer or a Portuguese trader. They were already there, folded into genomes that had been separated from the Old World for at least 15,000 years. To understand how that's possible, you have to go back further than any of this. You have to go back before agriculture, before pottery, before the first settlement. You have to go back to the moment modern humans started walking out of Africa and into a world that had no humans in it yet. That exodus began roughly 60,000 to 70,000 years ago. It wasn't a single wave, it was a series of pulses, branching groups, populations splitting and drifting, and occasionally making contact with each other after thousands of years of separation. And when the first modern humans walked into Europe, They didn't find an empty continent, they found Neanderthals. They had children with them. This is established science now, not fringe speculation. Everyone alive today whose ancestry traces back outside of sub-Saharan Africa carries between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. And here is the fact that reframes everything. Neanderthals had red hair too. Not through the same gene variant. The specific MC1R mutation, reconstructed from Neanderthal bone samples, first sequenced by a team in Barcelona in 2007 from specimens found in Spain and Italy, was a variant called MC1RE92K. It's not the variant that makes a child in Edinburgh stand out at school. But the underlying biology is the same, the MC1R gene producing an altered pigmentation response, reducing dark melanin, shifting toward lighter hair and paler skin, a different path to the same destination. Which means red hair, as a biological phenomenon, is older than Homo sapiens. That changes the question. We've been asking, where does red hair come from? The better question is, why did multiple different lineages, across tens of thousands of years and multiple continents, keep arriving at variants of the same gene with the same effect? The vitamin D hypothesis is the most widely supported answer. Near the equator, dark pigmentation protects against intense UV radiation. But travel far enough north, into environments where sunlight is weak and winters are months long, and the calculus reverses. Reduced melanin allows more UV absorption, which enables more vitamin D synthesis, which is critical for immune function, bone density, and reproductive health. Lighter skin, lighter hair in high latitude, low sunlight environments, these traits carry a survival advantage. Natural selection, working independently in different populations over thousands of years, kept nudging the MC1R gene in the same direction. But the Brazilian finding doesn't fit neatly into this. The Amazon is not a low sunlight environment. Something else must account for those traces. The current best explanation involves a specific prehistoric population, the ancient North Eurasians. This is a lineage, not an ethnic group in any modern sense, just a genetic cluster that split off from other Eurasian groups extremely early, possibly 35,000 to 40,000 years ago, and lived in relative isolation across Siberia for millennia. They were the ancestors, in part, of the people who crossed into the Americas. They carried MC1R variants. Those variants crossed the land bridge with them. They ended up in Brazil not through European contact, but through a migration that predates Europe as we know it by thousands of years. And those mummies in the Tarim Basin? When their genomes were finally fully sequenced and published in Nature in 2021, a paper that rewrote the archaeology of Central Asia, they turned out to be a branch of those same ancient North Eurasians. Genetically isolated for so long that they barely registered as related to any modern population, their reddish hair wasn't imported from somewhere else. It was a remnant of something ancient, something that predated the Celts, predated Rome, predated almost every ethnic category we currently use to think about where people come from. They were carrying human prehistory in their hair. Now bring it all together. The Yamnaya Bronze Age pastoralists from the Pontic Caspian steppe, north of the Black Sea, expanded explosively around 5,000 years ago, moving west into Europe, east into Central Asia, south toward the Indian subcontinent. They were genetically distinct, physically large, and they carried MC1R variants. Their westward expansion brought those variants deep into northern Europe, where isolated island populations Ireland, Scotland held on to them. Recessive gene, meeting recessive gene, generation after generation, until red hair went from rare to common enough that a country started building part of its cultural identity around it. Ireland is not the origin of the red hair story. Ireland is where the story ran out of road. It's the far northwestern corner of a continent, and once you arrive there with your genes, there was nowhere left to go. When you assemble the complete picture, the UK Biobank data, the ancient Siberian genomes, the Neanderthal DNA reconstructions, the Amazonian population studies, the Tarim Basin sequencing, The Yamnaya migration maps it stops being a story about a quirky Celtic trait and becomes something else entirely. It becomes a record of how humans moved across a planet for 70,000 years, which pressures shaped their biology, which ancient lineages survive inside modern bodies that don't even look related. There are people alive right now, in populations you would never associate with red hair, carrying a single silent copy of an MC1R variant that has been traveling through human genomes since before agriculture existed. It expresses nothing. It shows nothing, but it's there. A genetic postcard from an ancestor who lived and died in a steppe or a desert or an ice age forest that no longer exists. The red-haired kid who grew up self-conscious about standing out is not an anomaly sitting at the edge of human diversity. She is sitting at the intersection of 40,000 years of migration, isolation, mixing, and adaptation. Bronze Age herders, Ice Age survivors, ancient lineages that outlasted entire civilizations, and a small contribution from a species we used to think we had nothing to do with. Her hair is that old. The ancient DNA field is producing data faster than anyone can fully interpret it. Every year, a new burial site reshapes the map. Every year, the clean categories we use to sort human beings get a little blurrier, a little harder to maintain. That should probably tell us something. If you want to follow where this goes, the Yamnaya expansion alone is a story that deserves its own video. Because what those people did to the genetic map of Eurasia is genuinely staggering. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if something here left you with a question you can't quite shake, drop it in the comments. That's where the most interesting conversations in this channel actually happen.